In this chapter, we're going to create a blend material, a material that's going to allow us to blend between brick and concrete. So to start with, let's grab a concrete texture. So I'm going to launch Bridge. And I'm going to use this chipped painted plaster. I'm going to export this and bring it into my engine. Okay, so I've got my chipped painted material here and my brick material. So I'm going to create a new material. So my content folder, I'm going to click and I'll call this material blend. To make things a bit easier for myself, I'm going to take my textures for the chipped painted wall. I'm going to grab with Control all of these, and I'm going to copy them into my material blend folder. So I'll drag this over the material blend, let go, hit copy here. And I'm also going to grab my brick textures as well. And then we can go into our material blend folder. This is just for ease of accessing the different textures. So let's create a new material, and I'm going to call this material underscore blend brick concrete. Let's open this texture up and bring our textures in. Okay, with all of the textures brought in, I'm just going to do a bit of organizing. Since they're kind of in the order that I actually want them right now, I'm going to grab the first two and we're going to stack them on top of each other. I'm going to make sure that my brick always stays on top of each other, and this is going to be important further down the line. So next, these are my displacement textures. I'm going to actually pull those off to the side. The next two are my normal map, and the next are my roughnesses. So I'll get my roughnesses on top of my normal underneath my roughnesses. And these I'm actually not going to need in the material, but I'll keep them over here for the time being. Okay, so I'm going to use a node called height lerp. So I'm going to type in height, and I've got this height lerp node. It takes in an A and a B. It's got a transition phase, a height texture, and a contrast. And we'll go through all of this in a moment. I'll take the results of this and I'm going to plug it into my base color. It'll give me an error saying I don't have anything plugged into A and B, basically. Let's bring up our stats here. And yeah, it's telling us that we're missing a height texture, not a problem at the moment. So next I'll plug in my textures. Okay, so this is going to blend on a height map, and basically I want to blend based off of the brick's heights. So this displacement texture here actually has got information in it as far as the height is concerned. So overall, we can see the value of the bricks is brighter than the value of the grout, meaning that the bricks stick out kind of more than the grout. So we'll actually use this in our height texture. And we've got a contrast here. I'm going to right click, promote to parameter, and that will create a parameter named whatever this input is. I'm going to give it a default value of 0. And then we have transition phase, another constant that we will promote to a parameter, and we'll give it a default value of 0. So let's save this. And see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to drop my material onto my wall, and nothing really happens. So I need to create a material instance to get at those parameters, the contrast and the transition phase parameters. So once I have right-clicked on the material and created a material instance, I will then drag and drop that material instance onto my wall. Now I can take contrast and I can start to slide it. And if I go between 0, or rather -1 and 1, 0 being kind of nothing, -1 being the other texture, we can see that we can kind of blend between these two. Okay. So next is the transition phase, and that's not going to do too much. Actually, it will start to blend. Kind of pick which blends first, right? Here we've got this grout. We can kind of adjust it so that more of the grout is showing, and then as we bring this up, let's kind of overdo that, and then let's dial this back, and we can get some more of this this blend where we're blending in just between the grout. This is okay, but it's kind of going to be the same all over, and we want to use a technique called Vertex Blending. So let's go ahead and open up the master again. And instead of plugging in a constant value for this transition phase, instead we're going to call out the vertex color of the geometry. So I'm going to use the red channel of the vertex color, and I'm going to plug this into the transition phase. And this will basically allow me now to paint where I want that blend. So let me just move this out of the way for the time being. And let's get this a little more organized. Okay, so we haven't really changed much except we switched out the constant value for the vertex color, and we'll save our material. And I'll select my wall, and now I'll go to Modes, Mesh Paint. I'm going to select Paint, and now I'll hover over, and I've got brush size here, and we can see as I hover over, we'll see the vertices of my mesh. We've also got strength. I'm going to bring the strength down quite a bit to around 0.2, and I also want to be just targeting the red channel. If you remember, in my material, I just plugged in or pulled out of the red channel, meaning that I'm just using the grayscale values in the red channel of vertex color to paint where I have brick or concrete. So now I can click and drag, and I'm not really painting anything. So what I need to do is I need to actually swap these colors. So my paint color is white, my erase color is black. So if I hit swap colors, it's going to mix those. And now I can kind of paint and get one color or the other. I'm going to bring my brush down a little bit less. But yeah, now we can paint, and it's a little difficult to tell, but it is filling in certain areas first based on that height map. So the other thing that we can do here is we can adjust this contrast. So right now it's at -3. Let's set that back to 0, and we actually see that that gets kind of inverted. So now with Shift, I can paint. And what I can do here is just bring up this contrast quite a bit. So now I can start to paint. I'm going to swap colors with X, but here we're painting. And if you can see, as I click, we're kind of painting in the brick areas first, and then we're filling in the grout. If I hold down Shift and start to erase, you'll see that we start to erase in the grout first, leaving the tops of the brick. I can also adjust contrast even more, and we can kind of see this a little bit better. Okay, so this could be like painting, painting on top of the bricks. And as I erase, we're going to erase in the grout areas first. So if I want to invert that, what I can do is open up my material, and in the transition phase here, I can bring out a 1 minus, and I can plug that in, and that will essentially invert this. So when I hit apply, I should have the opposite, where we're kind of filling in Okay, so what I want to do is I actually want to invert this texture so that we fill in the grout areas first. So I'll pull out of here and I'll type in 1 minus, the word 1, O-N-E, and I'll plug this into the height texture. And once I apply this, we'll go back to our scene and we'll see that we're now filling in the grout areas first. You'll see that this is kind of creeping in through the grout and then up through the brick. Now, it's not doing the best job because of my height texture. My height texture actually isn't that great. It doesn't have a lot of range, okay? So what I mean by that is if I open this up, we can see that my grout isn't drastically different than the values on the top of my brick. And this is actually, there's areas on the tops of the bricks which are further back than the grout. So I really do just want to kind of process this image a bit more. So I can do this in Photoshop. So I'm going to launch Photoshop or any photo editing software of your choice. And I'm going to export this texture out. So if I go to Asset, let's right click on the displacement and we'll go to Asset Actions, Export. I'm going to export this to my desktop. We'll see that it's exported as an HDR. So once I've got Photoshop open here, I'll File, Open. Let's go to our desktop and grab our displacement. So a couple things to note. This comes in red because of the type of texture it is. Okay, if we look at the channels, there's only information in the red channel. Okay, there's nothing in the green or the blue. And if we take a look at the modes, this is RGB color, 32 bits per channel. We want to switch this to 8 bits per channel. And delete that. All right, so I'm going to go into the channels and I'm going to target the red channel. I'm going to hit Control A, Control C. I'm going to do File, New, and my clipboard here should have it set as a 2K by 2K. The color mode is actually set to grayscale right now, so I'm going to change that to RGB color. I want to make sure that it's 8 bits per channel, and I'll hit, and the resolution is at 72 pixels per inch. So with my new document here, I'm going to hit Control V and paste this. I can now close this HDR, and now I've got kind of a regular old texture, as it were. I'll delete my background here, and we're just going to do some processing. So again, I want this height information to have more value and more range. Okay, so I want to have more values between pure black and pure white. So if I hit Control L and open up my levels, we'll see that I've actually got a lot of blacks missing and a lot of whites missing. So I'm going to simply take the blacks and drag them to where I first start to get this ramp. Okay, and now we'll see that I've got like actual black values in my texture. I'm going to do the same for white, pull these to about there. And this is going to be just much better. It's going to give me a lot more range in that height map there. So let's just take this and save it out. So I'm going to hit Control Shift S to save, and we'll call this brick underscore height. I'll save it as a targa, and we'll hit save. 24 bits per pixel. That means it's a 3-channel RGB texture with 8 bits per channel. So 8 for the red, 8 for the green, 8 for the blue. Each pixel has 8 times 3, which is 24. So back in Unreal, let's import our texture. Okay, so now we've got this image here, and we've got a little bit of the stuff going into the grout. But as soon as we swap this with our new texture, we're going to see that we have much more information. So let's just go ahead and grab the brick height, and I'll just drag it over to here. I'll hit apply to let my material recompile. And there you go. We see that we've got a lot more information because, again, we have more value between 0 and 1. So I can select my wall again. Let's go to paint, and I can start to paint. I'm going to lower my brush down so I can really kind of see this grow. And yeah, now we can just kind of eat away at that brick. I can lower my contrast. That is incredibly high. Let's go ahead and bring it up to somewhere that looks kind of decent. 5 or so, I think looks good. Let's just go up to 7. Okay, now as I paint, or I can hold Shift to erase, we can blend between these two materials. It's a pretty cool technique. And again, if I want this to be on the tops of the bricks, like it was just painted on top and we only hit the tops, we just invert with the 1 minus. So let's give ourselves a little more functionality here. And what I want to do is I want to be able to switch between the inverse or not. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to type static switch, and I want to select the static switch parameter. I'm going to call this invert. Okay, and what happens is the default is false. So whichever way I want to be the default just depends on whether I plug in this into true and then this into false, or if I swap these and put that into true and this into false. So for the sake of the way that the graph looks, I'm going to plug it in like this. And false will be that it is essentially inverted. And then true, the switch, true, when we switch it to true, we'll do the opposite of that. So once I close and save, we now have a invert switch. And if I just hit the switch, we'll see that we go from painting into the grout to painting on top of the brick first. And in this instance, I kind of like this this painting on the top of the brick first and kind of eating away at the layer underneath. Okay, so now that we have this material, let's go ahead and plug in the rest of the textures. So all we did that for at the moment was the base color. So we're going to need height lerps for our roughness and for our normal. So I'll just select the height lerp and I'm going to hit Control W, which will duplicate it. And I'll hit Control W again. We'll plug in our A into the brick, our brick into A, and our concrete into B. The contrast is going to go in to both of these, and the height texture is going to go into that switch, and then the transition phase goes into the red of the vertex color. Then we'll plug the result into its corresponding roughness and normal. Try to make this a little bit prettier. I can go ahead and delete this. And I'll hit apply and I can close. And I've got my full material there with the normal and the roughness and everything. So I will get out of this mesh paint mode and go back to select. I'll select all the walls that I want to paint this on. And I will just drag and drop that instance into the material. And we can go back to mesh paint, and I can simply click on paint and hit fill, and I can fill it with the one. And then as I start to paint, we can start to remove the texture. I'm going to bring my strength up a bit more to maybe 0.25. It's a little bit too much. 0.15. And we can just start to remove some of this concrete texture. and reveal some of that brick underneath. All right, I just lowered it a bit there to 0.075 because I want to kind of have a bit more control as I'm kind of painting these strokes, and really just get little bits of kind of nicks and dings and dents. I don't really want to get a ton of the big brick showing, but we really can do whatever we like. So on these corners here, I'll say, hey, this is like a high traffic area. We'll probably have a lot of dings and dents around here, and especially where that garbage can is. So let's scratch off some of that paint. And we can really just kind of have fun with this and get some really unique and interesting textures. All right, in the next chapter, we're going to paint puddles on the water with the same technique.